Joining me right now with reaction is Congressman Devin Nunes and Kash Patel, who worked together to expose the Russia collusion hoax. Kash went on to serve as Deputy Assistant to President Trump and the Chief of Staff for the Defense Department, and it is wonderful to have you both on this morning. Thank you so much for being here, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maria.
Kash, let me kick it off with you. I spoke with Devin a bit about this on Friday on Fox. So kick us off this morning. Give us your reaction to Kevin Clinesmith and this sentencing of probation.
Well, thanks, Maria. And honestly, it's probably the biggest example of one set of rule for them and another set of rule for the rest of the American public. As a former federal prosecutor and a former federal public defender, I've handled hundreds of sentencings in federal and state courts. And this type of criminal activity by a senior level government official in the FISA court process to intentionally lie and exclude information to receive a slap on the wrist because, as the judge said, he had lost a job and that was punishment enough. If I went into a federal court and put that in a pleading to say my client has suffered embarrassment, please don't sentence him to prison, that is a joke and that is a travesty of justice, and it's just an outrage.
Well, what were you expecting, Kash?
Well, in these matters, Maria, there's federal sentencing guidelines, which are computation of the crime and criminal history and the behavior, et cetera. And the sentencing guidelines in this case called for prison. And the judge gave a downward variance based on stats that he believed to apply in the case. Now, of course, the sentencing guidelines are persuasive and not mandatory, but as anyone knows who's been in federal court, they are very much near binding. And so for him to do that, it is a political decision to let this criminal off the hook because he interfered with the political process of the United States because he didn't like the party on the other side.
Wow. Devin Nunes, your reaction.
Well, if you look at the Friday night surprise by this judge, a lot of Republicans across the country are saying, look, how are we going to really support this FISA process moving forward? This has been a process that's been in place for 40 years. It's protected America after 9/11. We made a lot of adjustments to it. But look, Friday night, Clinesmith, who should be in jail right now, probably is still on a binger celebrating with all of his Democratic Party pals, and sent a clear message to people at the Department of Justice and the FBI in the new Biden administration that if you follow our politics, if you practice wokeism, if you ensure that we target conservatives and Republicans across the country, don't worry, we're going to take care of you. And that's what's happened here. And if you look forward to the Durham investigation, this investigation's been going on a couple of years now. I think if you're John Durham, you have to really be looking at, are you really going to bring any prosecutions in the District of Columbia when you can't even get the presiding judge over the FISA court to prosecute someone and sentence someone that actually lied to that very court? So, and you look at, Durham could bring dozens of indictments if you get this judge. This judge, if you take the way he's operated, he actually may pay these criminals for their crimes. So I think Durham's got to really look at, is he going to bring these to the District of Columbia, or are you going to have to go somewhere else at this point?
Yeah, I mean, the weaponizing of the intelligence agencies, Devin, you wrote about back in 2018, and we have your memo, the Nunes memo, when you talked about Christopher Steele. You said Steele was a longtime FBI source who was paid $160,000 by the DNC and Clinton campaign via the law firm Perkins Coie and research firm Fusion GPS to obtain derogatory information on Donald Trump's ties to Russia. Even today, so many years later, Congressman, many people still believe that there was collusion because of the incredible way that they were able to spread this lie. They're calling election fraud the big lie. In my view, this is the big lie. Russia collusion with Trump.
Yeah, what you're seeing here is the normalization of fake news narrative building. So you have political parties that decide that they want to go out and hire a bunch of people, develop a narrative that you go out and get reporters to go report on, and then the FBI takes it and picks it up and then uses it at the FISA court to actually make whatever the news narrative you want real. And that's what you're seeing now with this whole idea that we're now going to, after 5 years, it's been 5 years since the beginning, at least that we know of the corruption of our intelligence agencies in this country. Now you hear this talk about domestic terrorism. Now they want to use, after they've corrupted it, they now want to take and make a change so that they turn the entire apparatus of the intelligence agencies on Americans that they don't like, Americans who maybe voted for Trump, Americans who use Parler, who think that Twitter and Facebook and Google and Apple are monopolies and antitrust and they should be broken apart. There's 75 million Americans who don't like those companies, who don't want to use those companies, but have to. They make a move to a small company like Parler and they get booted off. So I think what you're seeing, Maria, here is 5 years ago you saw the beginning of this, of hiring foreign agents, doctoring up evidence, and now what you're going to see is the FBI to the military is all going to be politicized because supposedly if you didn't vote the way the left and the Socialists and the Democrat Party wanted, you're now a domestic terrorist.
Yeah. That's unbelievable, Cash. Weigh in on that. And is there anything Republicans can do about this? We're going to talk with Stephen Miller coming up, and he has a lot to say about this. He says that Ken Paxton right now is the most important, powerful Republican because he's suing the Biden administration. He's expecting more AGs to do the same. But your reaction to what you heard from Congressman Nunes, you put a list out, Cash, didn't you, about all of the information and the documents you wanted to see declassified. And even in that list, you and Congressman Nunes did not see all of the things you thought you knew.
Absolutely, Maria. I mean, Congressman Nunes is spot on in terms of the weaponization of portions of the intelligence community. Let's just go to the FISA process. As a former terrorism prosecutor who used the FISA process appropriately to safeguard the American public and the homeland, to see its bastardization in this way is so outrageous, and it's only increased by the sentencing of Kleinsmith. Now, we know that the most basic level, you don't have to know anything about the courts or warrants or anything. But this fundamental principle of due process is if there's exculpatory information that you as a Department of Justice prosecutor are aware of and the FBI is aware of, then you must present it to a federal judge. And as you highlight in Devin's memo of February 18, not just one sentence was validated by the independent inspector general, all of it. And the crux of that memo goes to show you how much the FBI knew of the innocence expressed by those that they were targeting in the Trump campaign, and what we called exculpatory information was intentionally withheld, as shown by Kleinsmith and others, from the FISA court. If I did that as a prosecutor or federal public defender, I wouldn't have handcuffs put on me a month later. I'd be shown to the back of the judge's room where the jailhouse sits, and I'd be in there overnight for many nights to come. So we have shown through Congressman Nunes' work the weaponization of intelligence that is selectively applied for political gain. That cannot happen in the United States of America. In terms of how we go forward, Maria, we need warriors like Congressman Nunes and his team on House Intel and the other folks on the Hill like Lee Zeldin to stand up and continue fighting, because it is the hardest fight that we are in right now. And thanks to you, Maria, we have a platform for at least millions of people to continue to listen to this. It's just as easy for the left to ignore it, but it's twice as hard for us to continue the work, and that's what we need, and we'll continue to hammer on it.
And it's more than just the censoring of information that you don't have a platform. There's also a stick in the eye, putting Eric Swalwell in charge of impeachment, knowing his background with the Chinese spy. I want to get your reaction to President Biden putting Peter Strzok's wife. Peter Strzok's wife has just been put in charge of the Securities and Exchange Commission's Enforcement Division. You cannot make this stuff up. Let's take a break and get into it when we come right back. I'm talking with Kash Patel and Devin Nunes, and we'll be right back. And we're back with Congressman Devin Nunes, ranking member of the House Intel Committee. He is author of the book Countdown to Socialism. Also, Kash Patel is here. They work together to expose the Russian collusion hoax to America many times on this program. Congressman, I want to ask you about the revelation that we have on Peter Strzok's wife, Joe Biden naming her to the head of the Enforcement Division for the Securities and Exchange Commission. We still don't know if Peter Strzok is going to get any accountability for his role in following this made-up story of Russia collusion with Donald Trump. Your reaction?
Well, if you look at what happened to Kleinsmith, the lawyer that knowingly lied, that was clear, that pled guilty, It looks like Peter Strzok is actually probably going to get reimbursed for all of his troubles, probably going to get paid above and beyond. You know, the guy lost his job, but nothing's happened to him to this point. I'm obviously being sarcastic, but, you know, I have no idea if you let this lawyer off that was actually doctoring evidence, how is anybody else going to ever pay the price? Now, look, I don't know this guy's wife. Maybe she's great. She could be a great public servant for all I know. But if you look at the larger picture, the Russia hoaxers, the people that were pushing this out from the very beginning and then lying about it after the fact, they're all at the top echelons of the Biden administration. So these were former Obama officials, lied, made up the Russia hoax, put it out there for 4 years, were all over social media, and now they've been rewarded. I mean, if you look at the Defense Department, within the White House, the National Security Council, it's full of what I like to call it, we call it the Russia hoax, but it's even more than that because it was so outrageous, Maria. Remember, they're really like P-tape hoaxers. Remember all the nasty stuff that supposedly happened in Moscow? This was not believable to anyone unless you had a sick, demented mind. These people knew that this was written by Fusion GPS. They knew that they were putting it out to willing people within the media that would take and run with these narratives. And look, they'll deny this, but the FBI knew damn well, and the DOJ, there was a small cadre of them. They knew this was all a lie, and they were all part of it. And now the first guy that had been indicted just skated.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's right. Cash, you know, what you have is the same group that abused power in 2016 and 2017 are back in power. And it's extraordinary to me that these people abused power and turned our incredibly important intelligence agencies into weapons against their political enemies. And it's the Republicans that are being blacklisted, and the conservatives being told, you can't have a book deal. You can't come and speak at Harvard. Your point of view doesn't matter and will not be heard in the public square. You worked at the Pentagon, Cash, and now we know that the Pentagon has stopped political appointments for any Trump allies to join defense advisory boards. It was supposed to be that Corey Lewandowski and David Bossie were going to be joining the Defense Advisory Board. That's been shelved. They can no longer do it, and the Pentagon is stopping anybody associated with Trump from joining these advisory boards.
You're absolutely right, Maria. I mean, this is a perfect example of the hypocrisy of the Biden administration. Their call for unity is a joke. If you start with what we started this conversation with, Strzok and Kleinsmith, I'm sure Kleinsmith's on his way to getting a presidential pardon, and maybe he'll be the next attorney general. There's one set of rules for them, and there's a different set of rules for us. Now, turning to the Defense Department, that's a great example. And you just named two individuals. Chris Miller and I appointed, scores of individuals, maybe hundreds, as we're entitled to the defense boards that help advise the Defense Department from business, innovation, science, technology, and policy. Now, here's the kicker, Maria. These appointments were all signed by Secretary of Defense Chris Miller. They are a legal standing order that is being actually ignored. And I'll give you one worse example, Maria. I was actually sworn in to the Defense Policy Board, and I received an email from the White House Liaison Office, which is a group of small people that represent the White House at the Defense Department for the Biden administration, that said, even though you were sworn in, we are pausing your onboarding process. I don't know where they get the constitutional ground to do that or the gall, but this call for unity is garbage. And I'll give you one stark example that struck me on my way out of the Pentagon. They terminated my employees who were on paternity and maternity leave because they were appointees by President Trump. If we did that, that would be a travesty of justice, and it would be an internal investigation for months, if not years to come. How can you terminate the employment of someone who has taken maternity or paternity leave to take care of their newborn? It is simply outrageous conduct, and this call for unity is garbage.
Unbelievable. Well, you have to believe that to be true until President Biden says something about all that's going on. You need to hear from the commander-in-chief to say, stop the hate, stop the nonsense, stop the blacklisting, and stop doing what you're doing to Trump allies. We'll see if he says it. Until then, how can you believe anything other than what you said? Garbage. Devin Nunes, Kash Patel, great to have you this morning. Thanks very much. We, of course, will continue to spotlight this.